there was information from the Indian government that a refugee train is due to arrive. Muslim refugees from other places. And I remember twice, not once, twice. When the train compartments were opened, they were full of dead bodies. They had been slaughtered. It was a horrible sight I can't get over.
1 million people died. 1 million Hindus and Muslims across the border. And 10 million people were uprooted. The biggest price that any country ever paid for such kind of operation. The Pakistan that ultimately Jinnah got, and the basis on which he got was based on hostility, the basis of hate.
And yet for most of his political life, Jinnah had been anything but a Muslim nationalist. Indeed, unlike the Hindu Gandhi, he had little interest in religion. In 1915, Jinnah gave a garden party to welcome Gandhi back from South Africa. Thanking his host, Gandhi publicly singled him out as a Mohammedan. The tactless description set an uneasy tone for a relationship which would have profound consequences for the subcontinent. Jinnah resented being typecast as Muslim when his manner and dress were so westernized and modern.
He was very British in his own character. That is the funny part, you see. He was so British, it's just not true. The way he behaved, the way he lived, the way he ate, the way he stood, everything that he did was very, very British.
As a young man, Jinnah had trained as a lawyer in London. Back home, he soon became one of India's leading barristers and a prominent campaigner for self-rule. He was a member both of the Muslim League, set up by wealthy landlords to protect Muslim interests, and of the Indian National Congress, which became the leading force for Indian independence.
When Gandhi came from South Africa, my father was already an established politician.
What would they have had in common which would have led them to understand each other?
Well, I think the original thing that was in common was how to get the British out. That was the, how to get India independent.
If you read what Jinnah said and did right from 1906, when he really entered active politics, you cannot find a better explanation of the Hindus and Muslims coming together, emphasizing the commonality between them.
Jinnah came to be known as the ambassador for Hindu-Muslim unity. But, ever the lawyer, he believed freedom should be won by political negotiation. In 1920, this provoked a split with Gandhi. Like Jinnah, Gandhi had trained in London as a barrister. But he discarded his lawyer's suit for simple peasant's clothes, and he turned the elitist independence movement into a campaign of mass civil disobedience against the British. Such unconstitutional action was to Jinnah an anathema.
He was, in the very precise European sense, at that juncture, a very secular person. His politics was liberal, his politics was secular. These were the two planks he was pursuing. These were the planks on which his militant nationalism rested. And Gandhi's appeal to religion as the basis of drawing people into politics, particularly as far as the communities of Islam was concerned, because he reached out to the pan-Islamic sentiment of the 20s, Gandhi did. And Jinnah was very unhappy about this.
Isolated, Jinnah left Congress. After his final speech rejecting Gandhi's new tactics, he was booed off the stage. His career with Congress was dashed, and so too was his personal happiness. In 1929, his young wife died. She was not yet 30. Jinnah decided to leave India. He set sail for England, where he would live for the next 5 years with his sister and daughter. Nothing could have seemed more improbable than that in just a few years, Jinnah would found a nation. London in the 1930s. Jinnah, in self-imposed exile, was prospering as a barrister. Meanwhile, in the unlikely setting of suburban South London, a group of Indian students came up with the revolutionary idea of a separate state for Muslims.
In Surbiton, London, we had a big dinner, and we were thinking of these ideas, various ideas of how can we get freedom, how can we get freedom. And finally, it emerged like this. We will have the Muslim state, and what is the name going to be? What name? So we said the first name of the provinces. We had P for Punjab, A for Afghania, K for Kashmir, S for Sindh, and Tan for Balochistan. And we had no idea at that time of East Pakistan joining us, you see. So this is how the word Pakistan was created.
The enthusiastic students took their new plan to Jinnah, now living in Hampstead with his sister Fatima and his daughter Dina.
And when we broached this subject to him, he was absolutely furious. And he said, almost he said, if I can remember quoting him, had it not been for your ages, I would have taken you to be stooges of British imperialism. You are out to break one good the British have done, to unite the heterogeneous elements of India into a united whole. And you are out to break this. Keep away, young men. Keep away from them. Something like that.
So at that time, he was still absolutely committed to an Indian union.
Unity.
But in the 1930s, some Muslims in India were becoming worried by Congress. They believed Gandhi, now India's political superstar, was turning it into a Hindu-dominated organization, a charge Congress and its Muslim members fervently denied. Back in London, the Surbiton students were followed by a succession of Muslim leaders pleading with Jinnah to return to India and revive the Muslim League. The League's most radical thinker was the poet Muhammad Iqbal. He too wanted a self-governing state for Muslims.
My father pointed out that if the Westminster type of democracy is introduced in the Indian subcontinent, the result of it would be that the majority would keep the minority, Muslim minority, in its hegemony. So therefore there must be some system which should safeguard the rights of the Muslims.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
Separate electorates subsequently became the basis of the so-called two-nation theory, and also the development of Muslim nationhood in the Indian subcontinent. And eventually you can say that it resulted in the secession of Islam from India.
But Jinnah wasn't ready for such ideas. When he went home to India, he still wanted to work as an ally of Congress against the British. His plans were wrecked by the elections of 1937. The Muslim League got a paltry 21% of the Muslim vote. Jinnah lost any muscle to force an accommodation with Congress.
It's the day he realized that, and he injected communalism in politics. Mr. Gandhi, I say. And Mr. Jinnah resented that. And he says, you are trying to Hinduize politics. He felt the Hindu being in perpetual majority, they will wipe out the Muslims. And Muslims will remain only serfs and will be totally dominated by the Hindu majority.
Gandhi's closest collaborator, the victorious Congress leader Jawaharlal Nehru, took immediate advantage. He insisted his party alone represented the Indian people and saw no reason to share power with Jinnah.